Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Sword Art Online 2 episode review, my first one. This is going to be for episode 1, or I suppose technically episode 26 of Sword Art Online, given that this is just the second season. But the episode is called World of Guns, and it's the first episode in the GGO or Gun Gale Online arc, or Phantom Bullet arc as the kind of fancy name for it is. And yeah, so pretty cool. We're starting off Sword Art Online 2. I don't have the light novels for this one yet. The first light novel is coming out in English August 18th. So I should have that when it comes out in about 3 weeks. And then I don't have the DVD either because the DVDs are not yet out. The first part of the DVD set and Blu-ray will be out at the end of this month, and I also will be getting that. And I'll probably do a review because I have the special edition version of it on pre-order, so you get a lot of stuff with that. Should be a fun video to discuss that. So at least for now, I can't really discuss how accurate the anime is to the light novels and stuff like that, but I do really like this arc, and I think this is a good episode to start things off, just to establish that. Look, a bit of time has passed. Obviously, this is set immediately after Sword Art Online Extra Edition, which I just reviewed yesterday. One thing I did forget to say in that review was just that there was that little epilogue bit at the end where Kirito's phone rang, and it was from Kikuoka, and you see that the reason he called Kirito was because of this incident, and that's why they meet up and kind of flashback in this episode. So just wanted to mention that. And yeah, basically they established that around a year has passed since they've been out of Sword Art Online, Aincrad I suppose. And yeah, it's just interesting, I suppose, to start off with with our characters, just Kirito and Asuna in the real world going out on a date. And just some of the stuff that they bring up here that kind of relates to the overall theme that Sword Art Online 2 deals with. Whereas the first season, both arcs kind of dealt with this idea of treating the virtual world as if it was the real world and how they're not so different. This arc more deals with this idea of how real can you actually make the virtual world? And can the virtual world actually affect, like in real physical ways, your body in the kind of physical world? You see that in this arc with the whole idea of Death Gun, the villain, and what kind of Kirito is struggling with here. Plus in basically the second arc, the kind of Mother Rosario Sleeping Nights arc, with just the idea of if someone is that ill, can the virtual world, basically full diving a severely ill person into a game, can that basically act as a real world for them? And I think that's just really interesting. I love how the way they deal with it is kind of primarily through the fact that Kirito, in terms of a career path that he wants to go on, is to become the creator now. He wants to kind of really go further with the technology and develop things, and this kind of human-machine interface that he thinks up of, and gradually you see over the course of the season that kind of develops into basically a way to kind of get Yui into the real world and kind of give her the chance to experience the real world. So I really like that idea that it sets up that, and it also sets up that Asuna isn't too sure what she wants to do with her life going forward in terms of her career path. All she knows is that she wants to be with Kirito, and that sets up her arc in the Mother Rosario arc, which is the kind of final arc of this Sword Art Online 2. So a lot of stuff being set up here in the GGO arc that isn't kind of resolved until the next arc, which I really like. But yeah, some of the stuff that they bring up here is just Asuna kind of questioning, like, what is the difference between the virtual world and the real world? And Kirito just comes out straight away and says, it's a difference in the amount of data. Roughly, they are equivalent, but in the real world, there's so much more data that is so much that a game right now can't quite capture everything. It can capture a certain amount of touch, but it doesn't have everything. It doesn't have the pulse that you feel in like your hands and stuff like that when you touch something. It doesn't have absolutely everything. It doesn't have I suppose the pure quality and kind of full science effects, I suppose, of actual sound, hearing, taste, smell. Um, but in essence, they are both worlds. The only difference is that the real world has much more data compared to the game, because everything has to be made in the game, whereas like everything kind of just exists in the real world. And it's a really interesting concept that kind of makes you think. They don't kind of go too heavily into like trying to confuse you, but just enough to where in the year that this game is set, that the things are set in here, that the technology is that advanced where they're really thinking about this sort of stuff. Um, and yeah, basically on their date, they kind of primarily just kind of talk about this sort of stuff. They go to this kind of monument, this kind of protected area in Tokyo that, yes, it has technology, but it's kind of kept roughly the same. It's this kind of closed off area. It's kind of like a separate world in the overall modern world, and no information can come in or out, and they're just exploring some interesting kind of ideas here. And you gradually see that this date actually is taking place after Kirito has went to his meeting with Kikuoka, and he doesn't quite reveal to Asuna that he has, I suppose, agreed to go into Gun Gale Online yet, but he will, and she doesn't really have much of a problem with it when it actually does happen. But again, it was just nice to see the two on an actual date and see them kind of interact, kind of talking about the others. You know, like, hey, someday we're going to have to bring everyone here. They also bring up this idea that, hey, this is a place where like a castle used to be, and this kind of represents a really important moment for us when we saw basically the end of Aincrad, where it was this place, they saw a sunset as a place that had a castle fell from the sky, and there's no longer a castle there. So that was a kind of pretty cool comparison to have there. But it's definitely one of the notable things about this first episode, in that really, when it comes down to it, the whole thing is just three scenes. It's the Kirito Asuna date, it's his meeting with Kikuoka, and then the death gun scene at the start. And I suppose I'll get into that death gun scene now. Really interesting and kind of just kind of action packed, I suppose, way to start off the episode and season, with just straight away introduced to the kind of antagonist, our villain for the arc, Death Gun. Really cool design with the cloak, and then you see the kind of the really kind of what's the best way to describe it? Just a really ominous looking mask that he has, and the kind of smoke when he breathes out, the effect on the voice because of the kind of full face mask and helmet, and then yeah, the kind of trademark gun, Death Gun, and just this idea that, okay, this player's Exceed is kind of talking, he's being very arrogant. Not a lot of people seem to like what he's saying. He's kind of led people astray before, and talking about the different types of character builds, and clearly people are like listening to what he's saying, but it kind of hasn't worked out so well for them. And then Death Gun just kind of out of nowhere just points his gun up at the screen. He's just watching this guy on screen, shoots him, and then he suddenly dies of a heart attack. And it's just a really weird, mysterious way to open up the arc, with the idea that this guy who seems obsessed with power, you know, true power, and doesn't seem upset at all with killing people, can apparently shoot someone in the virtual world and kill them in the real world. And they address this in the Kikuoka Kirito conversation, but just that as a concept is really interesting, because it's different than Kayaba, and they address this in that Kaiba was the creator of the Nerve Gear and Aincrad, Sword Art Online. So it kind of like made sense what he was able to do. He was able to, because he controlled the whole system, he was able to see that, okay, when this player's health hits 0 in the game, I activate this thing in relation to their Nerve Gear that is set up as part of the game, and they die. It worked there wasn't much of a mystery because he controlled everything about that. Whereas this guy clearly has to just be a player, and he can apparently do something in the virtual world with a virtual weapon that's just part of a game and affect someone's body enough through a signal, a bit of data, like Kirito kind of talks about. And he's thinking about, is it a touch? Is it a sense of kind of taste, smell, whatever? And it's enough to cause someone to have a heart attack in the real world. So really interesting concepts being dealt with here. That is, there's some deadly signal that is this error in this game that this guy has kind of taken advantage of, or is he something more? Just really cool way to establish a villain without kind of telling you too much about him. He's a mystery, but he's a threat. And that leads directly into the basically one remaining section of the episode, which is Kikuoka, the guy from the kind of virtual reality section of the government that's been set up. And of course he's asking Kirito about advice on this case that's happened, which is the death of the guy whose character was Zexseed, and it's also revealed that there were some other players who were killed as well. So it's this kind of murder spree that this Death Gun player is going on. And it was just interesting to get the idea on how the government handles like this weird subsection of crime that has suddenly developed with these games becoming so real. Like, how do you address this? How do you prove a lot of these crimes? Like, they're aware that, okay, this guy seems to be very clearly involved in the deaths of these people, but they have absolutely no way to prove or disprove that he has killed them through some exploit or any way. So they're just kind of like, you know a lot about real world stuff being affected by the virtual world. Kirito, can you go in and like check this out for us? And obviously, like, it makes sense. He's he's basically the most skilled player that they know, and he can adapt to a lot of games as he did with ALO. So they're just assuming that he can go into GGO and do really well, and you can see that Kirito knows a little bit about the game, but not that much. Just enough that there are pro players in this game, and it's really hardcore. And also the fact that it's a gun-based game. You know, Kirito's all about the swords. Straight away, you've got some kind of light bulbs flashing. Like, what exactly are they going to do with him in this arc if he goes into the game full of guns? But obviously, we'll see what they do with that in some upcoming episodes. Yeah, like obviously we've met this guy Kikuoka in Sword Art Online Extra Edition, and I think they showed a few little moments of him towards the end of the season, or did they? I'm not really sure. But either way, we've met him before. We see their kind of relationship. This guy does actually play games himself, so kind of Kirito knows him from the game. That's why he's calling him Kirito constantly, and yeah, just the fact that Kirito kind of isn't really interested for the most part, and kind of is kind of brushing it off. But then, when he reveals the extent of what this guy is doing, Kirito does kind of have that moment when everything suddenly gets real for a minute, where he's thinking, wait, I'm actually coming up with some theories in my head as to how this could actually happen. And then he brushes them off like, no, there's no way that could happen. But then when he gets more information, hears about other people being killed, how everything seems to be connected together through Death Gun, he kind of eventually kind of has to break down and agree to do this because he wants to solve this. And in many ways, you know, he's interested in this idea and would like to know if it is true, how this is actually being done. But it's just this episode is a good introductory episode, introducing you to the general kind of themes that they're going to explore, and stuff like that. Like, we don't really get a lot of the character stuff just yet. With obviously we haven't been introduced to Asada, who's Sinon, yet, and we don't really get the character arc that they're going to explore with Kirito just yet, with regards to the whole, you know, they've both, I suppose, killed people, and how they deal with that is the main thing that they're dealing with here. But none of that's kind of brought up just yet. But still, a solid episode establishing that, look, this is a brand new game that Kirito is going to be going into here. Here's the issue that he's dealing with. And it's different from both of the previous arcs in the sense of SAO was this crazy event that happened where the creator of the game took over and made it real. ALO was just a game which had some realism to it because Kirito was on a kind of time scale trying to save Asuna, who was still trapped in the game. Whereas this is like, he's free. He doesn't have to get involved with this if he doesn't want to, but he's being asked, he's being paid to do this, which I think is a cool thing, that they're actually hiring Kirito and paying him a pretty big amount of money to investigate this for them, which was a pretty fun, kind of funny moment where it's just like, I'll pay you this much. But just the idea of Kirito being kind of working for the government as this kind of virtual reality kind of expert agent that they're sending in there. That it kind of makes complete sense that if there are crimes being committed in virtual reality games, which at this point in time in the year that this game is set in, that the year that the show is set in, is such a big deal, and they kind of treat the virtual reality as somewhat real, that there would be some sort of like government kind of requesting the help of actual gamers to help them. So it's a kind of interesting concept there as well. But you know, I don't think this is the best episode of Sword Art Online overall. It really is just set up for this arc. As I said, it is just 3 scenes. It's a very quick death gun scene, and 5-6 minutes of Kirito and Asuna on a date, which is very cute and all. Very nice to get to see our 2 kind of main characters interact in the real world and kind of see their relationship. It's really close. And then basically like 10 plus minutes of Kirito and Kikuoka setting up the villain, setting up what Kirito is going to be doing, and that sort of thing. So it does what it needs to do. Not massively exciting, but a good setup. There's still much more interesting episodes to come, and I think next episode straight away is a lot more interesting. But that's been the review for the first episode of the arc. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were on this episode and your thoughts on my review of the episode. So, thanks for watching the video, and bye.